you're starting to see like memes again, just like these new memes that are launching have like sustained multiple week just straight run-ups, right? And I think it's just like indicative of the shift in risk appetite and sentiment in markets.
How much VC coin outperformance do you need to see before you rotate?
Exactly.
To that?
I want to see what happens after.
That's like,
after
let's
those
catch
unlocks.
the fucking hot potato. It's like, let's play hot potato with the piece of dynamite. Like, it's like...
Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hivemind podcast. Today, we're joined by the usual cast, myself, Jose Maria Macedo, Jan, Duncan, plus special guest Jason, who is now a regular on the Hivemind. I'd love to talk about
the market's going up, so we had to replace our head of intellectual research with our head of coins and markets. It was only proper.
Yeah. No, Cedars has got it. I think he's on holiday. He was in Singapore grinding it out. And maybe let's start there. What was everyone's, actually you guys didn't, two of you guys didn't go. But Jason, maybe start with you. What were your thoughts on Singapore and the whole conference circuit?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the first conferences I've been to in quite a while. It's not usually my scene. I don't typically go, but I figured, given everything that's happened with Solana over the last like year or so, pretty much dating back to last year's Breakpoint, I figured I would, make the 20-hour flight over there and kind of see
my bonk bags.
see the exit liquidity. No. And kind of just see what's going on, right? See what progress has actually been made in the ecosystem, see if it's all hype or not, right? Just kind of get the ground level info, so to speak. And I was honestly really, really kind of impressed with what I saw for the most part, right? I spent a fair amount of time listening to some of the different panels. They had like the left curve stage, which was like a lot of the consumer apps, games, things like that, MetaDAO, those types of projects. And then you had like the right curve stage, which is more updates on a lot of the more technical things, technical infrastructure updates like Fire Dancer and stuff like that. So between the two, I was extremely impressed with both. One, starting like on the left curve, like those consumer apps. I'm a big gamer, kind of like Pierce, if anybody knows Pierce. So I was really interested to see like what's going on in like, the GameFi ecosystem within Solana. As we've had a lot of, like promise and hype over the years for games, and a lot of it hasn't really come to fruition. And I was really glad to see that there's actually fun games coming to market. I've had the opportunity to play test several of them, right? We have Off the Grid, which is something that Delphi Ventures has invested in, which I've put probably 15 hours or so into the play tests over the last several months.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. What have you been playing it on?
What was that?
PC?
Yeah, PC. Only a PC gamer. Anything on console, I'm not going to touch. So PC is where I'm at. And then
how is Off the Grid relative to like other battle royales?
So obviously it's still like, in development. It's still very early in its development, but there is, I would say there's a lot of potential with it, right? There's really good gameplay loops. I like the movement mechanics. The shooting mechanics are really good. For people who care about lore and stuff like that, there's a fair bit of that involved as well. It's not really stuff I care about. I just like clicking heads and stuff like that. But, I had a lot of fun playing it, and a good barometer for these things is I have a normal IRL friend from college that I used to play video games with. Doesn't do any crypto stuff. It's not that he hates it. He's just, a normal working person who doesn't have time to get in the weeds with this stuff. But every time there's a gaming playtest, I kind of try to get him involved to see what like the normie take would be on it. And he sunk more hours into both Off the Grid and the Nyan Heroes kind of like Overwatch style game. I think he said he sunk like 35 hours into Nyan Heroes and maybe 20 hours into Off the Grid. And he said that he would have played those games, specifically Nine Heroes, even if there wasn't an airdrop. He had a lot of fun doing it. Obviously, like they're early, so like there's like bugs and stuff, like glitches. It's a little janky
Have you
sometimes.
played since the last update? Because they've done a big patch on off the grid specifically. They patched a lot of the movement stuff.
No, I have not. I plan on doing it. I think they open up playtests usually like every weekend or so. So I'll probably play this weekend because I don't want to do anything. I need to recover.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll probably test it out and I'll give you guys the updates. I know Piers put out a pretty big post on this recently as well, and I echo a lot of the same sentiment there. So in terms of like the GameFi stuff that I'm really interested in, I still think games are one of the ways we will actually get tens of millions of normies on board into crypto because gaming is so
Agreed.
huge. So I'm really bullish on these games and future iterations and future things that come to market there. And then like with the infrastructure stuff and the Fire Dancer, I'm not going to pretend like I knew like 80% of what Kevin Bowers was saying. But the fact that they've made such immense progress over the last several years, and now that Fire Dancer's live on mainnet, it's only replaying blocks, so it's not fully live. But the fact that it's there, I think that's probably going to, in my opinion, be the next like Solana catalyst, like the big catalyst for Solana going into year end and into 2025.
There were a lot though. Like the thing I did have gone to a few conferences last 2 years, and this was definitely the most bullish one. And specifically Breakpoint was like such a difference from ETHCC. It's actually crazy. Like
How so?
yeah, like ETHCC. I feel like sentiment was an all time low, and there was everyone was building infra on infra. There was a bunch of jaded people, like people kind of even people pitching you were kind of like jaded and like repeating the playbook rather than showing any excitement about what they were building. And then it was just like there's just a lot going on. People get angry about there's a new layer 2, there's these side events, everything's kind of competitive and zero sum. Whereas on Solana, it was just like announced, like the whole ecosystem just coordinated all these announcements. There was like announcement after announcement on that day. And it just felt completely different. There's also way more people building apps, actually trying to bring users on chain. And just way more like excited builders, I would say. Very, very different vibe. I almost capitulated on my ETH bag during Breakpoint, which would have been max pain. The reason I didn't was actually because it would have been more painful for me for it to pump after I sold than to continue underperforming. I've accepted continued underperformance at this point. Also, Token2049 itself was crazy. I think there was like 20,000 people there. Like wherever you went in Singapore, it was just crypto people, like crypto shirts, weird looking crypto people everywhere. It was like the city was taken over. It was pretty wild. Alex Fiscom, the organizer, does an insane job with that. Like, yeah, pretty impressive.
And so for like the vibes between ECC and Breakpoint, I think obviously, I would imagine a lot of it has to do, like ETH's performed like, decently well. I guess it wasn't. It was kind of flat year to day. Up until a couple of weeks ago, it was up.
Yeah, if you find this really narrow window.
Relative to USD. But like, do you think it's mainly because ETH has just like underperformed, so everybody's just kind of like very jaded, and Sol is just kind of ripped, so everybody in Solana is just super pumped? Or is it like actually people within the ETH ecosystem realizing that like the roadmap and everything isn't really fully aligned? It's really fragmented. There isn't like a clear a clear solution to that at this point.
Yeah.
Honestly, is it price action or is it fundamentals, Jose?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
definitely price action. There's definitely a lot of price action.
A big nail in the coffin was just the apathy from institutional investors post ETF. I think once that happened and there were no flows, you're looking ahead and it's like, what's the next real catalyst? This was kind of supposed to be the saving grace to some degree.
But ETC was before that, though, right? It was before even people were still hoping that the ETF would drive some flows. I do think part of it is ETH. It's like the cosmosification of ETH or whatever. Like there's no, like with Solana, there's this Shelling Point asset that everyone's aligned around. Like every builder owns Sol, everyone's bullish Sol, everything happens on Solana. And so there's this like camaraderie and just alignment between the ecosystem. that I think is really important. Like when you launch on Solana right now, you get all the benefits of that. Like you get a captive user base that wants to use and shill your project. You get investor interest. You get cross promotion. Like Solana Foundation promotes you. You get slots at Breakpoint. Like everything's very aligned. Whereas with ETH, it's sort of like balkanized, right? There's like a bunch of different L2s which are competitors, and then there's like L3s, and like a lot of what was happening with ECC was like L2s pitching each other to be L3s on themselves, right? It's like the Spider-Man meme, but like L2s and L3s. Like, no, you be my L3, and everything like these things are sort of like competing, and also the value doesn't really accrue back to ETH. So I think there was a lot of that, and also it was just like market. I think market timing generally was more depressing than like it was like meme season and stuff like this. But I do think part of it is this cosmosification of ETH, where there is no like ecosystem anymore, right? There's a bunch of tribes that each have their own tokens and ecosystems to pump, and that just makes the vibes a little bit worse. But it isn't necessarily bad for ETH, I don't think, because I do think that's the end game for Solana too. But
because I was gonna say, if Ceteris is here, I feel like he'd remind us that this is probably where Solana is eventually gonna get to, but right now it's like it's not there yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, how much further ahead does Fire Dancer push that inevitability, though? Right, if you can continue to scale the base layer, then.
Well, I think last time we had a big talk about it with Ceteris. He probably has updates after Breakpoint because he was there and understands the stuff much better. But he said like you'd probably get at least 30,000 TPS live, but apparently I don't know. I saw some tweets about them saying like 1 million.
I mean, that's what Kevin Bauer said in the speech. He said it was live on mainnet doing 1 million TPS.
Yeah, like Ceteris seemed to think that was
obviously it was all like synthetic transactions and everything, but yeah, we need somebody with an actual giga brain who knows that stuff a bit more.
What's ETH TPS?
Yeah, Ceteris was super excited about a lot of the Solana stuff. Was taking victory laps at
and while you're looking up that number, that point you brought up, Zay, about the foundation, right? I think it's a pretty big one. I was walking around with a bunch of people who work at Solana and the Solana Foundation, just meeting a bunch of the different devs working on different aspects of the ecosystem, and it seems to me that the Solana Foundation is extremely good at supporting teams across the entire stack, and it doesn't really feel the same way to me with the Ethereum Foundation at this point in time. And I think that's
for sure. They're very different.
I don't think that was ever the case with Ethereum Foundation, right? It was mostly
never the case with Ethereum Foundation. Yeah,
playing that role.
So ETH's TPS
and consensus, right? Consensus was like the best equivalent of the. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean ETH's TPS is like 10 or 15, right?
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. So even if they get 30,000, then it gives them a lot of runway. Versus
but you're not comparing to Ether. You're comparing to L2s.
I know, but and then L2s I looked at. This is from Cointelegraph, June 17th, 2024. They say L2 beat data shows Ethereum scaling networks, including Layer 2 and Layer 3 blockchains, registered a combined 245 TPS on June 16th.
145?
245.
It's definitely higher than that. It's definitely higher than that. I mean, we did that report a while ago, which is probably a better source than Cointelegraph, to be fair. The realized TPS Delphi report. but
anyway, so Solana is like a few, like 1 to 2 orders of magnitude higher is what they're saying Fire Dancer will be.
And I think you'll there was no real timeline that they put, but I think you'll probably start to see things like within Q1, Q2 of 2025. So
yeah, just in time to offset the unlocks from the discount sale.
Well played,
Foundation. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my takeaway is I went into Breakpoint and the week extremely bullish on Solana, and I think I came out more bullish, which was hard for me to think would happen. I was kind of going in expecting to be like, oh wow, a lot of this is all hype, but not really. I came out kind of bulled up and
what if the price had gone down over that week? What have you been? as excited.
I've been holding things down 70% for the last 6 months, dude. It's fine. It wouldn't have phased me one bit.
Yeah, I do imagine it adds a completely different vibe to a conference, because it's most conferences are associated with down moves, and it's just like everyone kind of coping with the crying face behind
it
the
is kind
smiling
of
face
impressive
mask.
though, right? Because last Breakpoint was, I think, like October of last year in Amsterdam, and prices kind of ripped, right? And then everybody's like, oh, like, are we gonna have the curse again? And we kind of,
Part of it is just like, there's a lot of historic seasonality to these asset prices. So having a conference in May and July, probably not going to get great price action versus a conference in October or late September kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Solana just really 1,000 IQing this thing.
Yeah, ECC is what, July, and then Solana is always
Bitcoin
in like
Miami is
Q4.
always like end of May when everything nukes.
Yeah. That is a really important point though, right? Like a lot of this stuff is very seasonal for the most part.
The other conference that was cool was the Network State conference. Biology's conference. I don't know if you went to that, Jason.
I watched it when I was in the airport leaving.
Nice. Yeah, there was like Brian Johnson and a bunch of people. Honestly, I left that one a little bit disappointed. Like I'm pretty interested in network states, and I'd been following one specific one for a while, Prospera, which is like in Honduras. And Honduras is a really cool one because they specifically altered the constitution to allow for like effectively network states. Like they can basically sell land, and people who buy the land get to alter, like fork the civil code. Like they can't have their own army and they can't change the criminal code, but they can change the civil code and the tax code. So and Prospera were these guys. They were backed by like Peter Thiel and Andreessen Horowitz and a bunch of people. They bought land there, and they really they have a really good blog post on this, which maybe we can put in the show notes. I feel like we've said we were going to do that, and I don't think we've ever done that, but we should probably start. Yeah, but it's a good post about just like they thought through everything, right? Everything from medical, like every drug that's legal in America or Europe is legal there. If you have a doctor's degree from anywhere, a medical degree from any of their like accepted states, you can practice there. They've also made it so that if you buy land on Prospera, you can actually have your mini Prospera within it, so you can alter the civil code on your land. So basically, it incentivizes like competition within Prospera because they don't ever want to like solidify. There's just a bunch of stuff that was really exciting. And then I kind of found out at the conference, I don't know how I'd missed this, but Honduras basically rugged them. So obviously it was a previous government that had made that had given them this concession, and the current governor of Honduras in 2022 just basically like rugged them, and they're now suing Honduras for $11 billion in damages for like the value of the real estate and stuff like this.
In a court in Honduras?
No, in an international. I forget the name of the court now, but it's like an international like trade. Yeah, they're suing the Honduran government. I'll find out the name of the thing they're suing them under, but it's going to be pretty tough.
So that's like kind of like an interesting one, right? Because I was like when I was listening to Balaj, because he did like a little spiel at Breakpoint on the last day or something. And I've always just kind of like wondered that, like, obviously, like you kind of mentioned it, like, oh, like you can't have your own military. So I assume, like the Honduras military or whatever country you're buying land from, that's like what you use or whatever. But like, yeah, like what happens if the government just decides to rug you? Like, what do you like? Is there like actually any recourse? Like it seems to me like I think the idea is fantastic, but like it seems so difficult to pull off in like a practical sense to me that like it's hard for me to get super bullish.
This was the one I was most bullish on because of like everything they thought through, and also the backers and like the fact that they actually had the ability to edit the civil code. Because I think without that, you just have like these pop-up cities and these like kind of hippie communities or whatever, which are cool, but it just lacks teeth, right? Like you really want to be able to do a proper experiment in governance, and to do that, you do need to be able to make some changes to the civil code. And like, I don't know, the problem is that the countries where
that's what
they're
I was gonna say,
open
it's
to doing
tricky
this
dynamic.
you
right?
can't
Yeah.
trust that they'll honor their promise, and the ones where you can trust they'll honor their promise don't want to do it. But it would make a lot of sense for like Portugal or Italy. Like we have so much land in the interior that's just totally abandoned, like beautiful land. Like, you know, in Italy they had this campaign, like Casa un Euro, like houses for €1. You could basically buy a house for €1 as long as you invested 50K into doing it up, just to try and repopulate their interior. And it's like you could generate so much more GDP per like meter squared of land if you had something like this, right? You just like cordoned off some part of of the country to do an experiment in governance, got a bunch of people to invest, like a bunch of entrepreneurs would go there and remote workers. It's just a shame that like European Union is like very far from.
Well, even more on that relationship in terms of, you know, the country that you'd want to do it in being the least kind of likely to do it, and then the countries where you're you know, is the fact that when it's successful, it also becomes a bit of a bounty, right? And so it's particularly in a country that, you know, might not be doing well because they were open to it in the first place. And so the, you know, you have two things traveling in opposite directions, and the one that's doing worse has kind of jurisdiction in like a tail risk scenario over the one that's doing well. And yeah, it's a tricky one.
I mean, and yeah, exactly. And the whole media, the whole like liberal media jumped on it. Like it's like these VCs are like neo colonialists taking over Honduras. Yeah, exactly.
You need like El Salvador or something to do it. Like some guy, like I feel like that guy would do it. You know, adopted Bitcoin. He's into this stuff.
I don't know if they have the land for it. It's yeah, I don't know enough about it. But the idea for this is actually from a Nobel Prize economist, right? It's the idea of like charter states. I think he won the Nobel Prize in like 2012 or something like this. What's the name of the guy? I forget his name, but basically it's the idea that some countries are like have really good natural resources and stuff, but they just can't govern themselves. So what if every country was governed like Switzerland? Like you basically just outsource the governance of your country to Switzerland and pay them like some percentage of tax revenue or whatever. And obviously you have like some contingency so you don't completely relinquish your sovereignty. But it's a pretty cool idea. I just felt like everything I saw at Network State was like the only one that was close to that kind of got rugged. So I was a bit like, I think Praxis is probably the next most promising one. It seems like they're negotiating with Mediterranean. They keep saying like Mediterranean countries. So maybe they get something done. I don't know.
Should we move on to markets?
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, should we do? You want to do markets or the sectors that were most hated and loved in Singapore?
Let's just stick on Singapore real quick. We could run through it. For me, what I felt when I was, you know, walking around all the panels and all the booths and listening to a bunch of the different debates and panels, to me, it seemed, you know, like obviously there's hype around, you know, the infrastructure developments with Fire Dancer and everything, but like I just kind of keep that to the side. I feel like that's a default. For me, it was kind of deepen and gaming. I think we start see, you know, a lot of progress with deepen projects, a lot more coming to market or in development. Right, you had, regardless of their pretty terrible panel on stage, you had like the Jambo phone, so like, you know, more hardware related things kind of building off of, you know, like that Saga phone, right? You have all of these like really cool actual real world things being, you know, built and stuff integrated within you know, the Solana ecosystem. And then obviously, like I mentioned at the start, like games, like the hype is quite real there. And it's just the one that I personally am most excited about. I was really excited about it going in, and I'm even more so at this point. I'm kind of curious what you think, Jose, since you were also there.
Yeah, I think Deepin was the number one consensus sector people were bullish on. I'd agree with that, and probably the second one I'd say was Crypto XAI. Although that one's a bit more polarizing. There's some smart people who think it's vaporware, and then I'd say the third was probably Ton ecosystem generally, which we can chat about. An interesting GameFi, I thought was like the one people were most capitulating on. Maybe it was who I spoke to, but it's like there was so much pain. Like, and I saw so many projects that had raised monster rounds 2 years ago and are now like trying to raise much smaller rounds at the same or lower valuations. like the token prices were terrible. Like a lot of the investors, I felt like were capitulating in the sector. So that seems like one where there's going to be some interesting opportunities. There's also some liquid stuff that's interesting.
I agree with that entirely. And right, like I think a lot of that comes down to a lot of people just funded really shitty games, right? Like at the end of the day, the games just need to be good games and fun, and then the other stuff will come, assuming you can, design good economics around it that aren't really like super obtrusive or most hopefully abstracted away, right? Because gamers don't really care that much, right? Like obviously it's in their best interest for these types of things to be adopted, right? As somebody who has an obscenely big Steam inventory for Counter-Strike Go skins, it would be pretty nice if I actually owned those, right? And Valve couldn't rug me whenever they wanted. So like, yeah, it is in gamers' best interest. It's kind of like you just have to convince them. And I think the best way to do that is just deliver them good games, which is starting to happen. Like this is the first time in all of crypto gaming where I've like actually had fun playing these games. And yeah.
I was gonna say, because good games take time, right? And everything in crypto is very short loops, quick,
Yeah,
short
and it's
expectation.
hard. It's hard to make good games. Just look at like the AAA studios in gaming that have, that put hundreds of millions of dollars into development for their games that end up being absolutely garbage and, churn like through 90% of their player base within a couple months.
Yeah. And those games are also massively de-risked, right? Because they're generally just iterating on previously very successful
Yeah,
titles,
IP,
and
exactly.
yeah.
And it's also a very hard area to invest in. And I think a lot of crypto investors sort of wisely actually stayed out of it because it's half venture investing, but half of it's like almost like art, or like investing in a movie or something. Like you're betting on this very subjective, sort of very subjective ability of a team to build a compelling experience.
I wouldn't say many stayed out though. I think you had many jump in head first 21, 22, and then the kind of staying out started in 23 when uh, expectations, which were a bit short in terms of the time it takes to build this stuff, didn't match what was delivered, and so um, now you have a scenario where naturally when there's a gold rush you're going to get a lot of crap, but there's going to be some good stuff mixed in, and so you're starting to see some of the quality ones that were funded, like all the games that are going to be coming out over the next year or so that are exciting they weren't built in the past 12 months, right? So it's all stuff that was funded a long time ago and takes a while, and so yeah, it's like it's a multi-year development cycle, and so I think the quality ones will start to show now.
Yeah, the alignment with like when people want distributions on their investments versus how long it actually takes to make something that's actually good. And like to Zay's point, like there's no like cookie cutter approach to making a very good game. It's all different from one to another, and specifically from one genre of game to another. Yeah, there's obviously best practices that go involved into making mechanics that are compelling and fun to use. And like making sure that there's like an adequate skill ceiling for people to get to, but it's also not impossible to pick up. There's like all of these things that you need to balance, and I think a lot of it also comes down to like I think this is probably like a sector where like you probably want to bet on founders who have built something in the past versus like other things in crypto where like we get these super young founders who are like making the first foray into entrepreneurship sort of things with building these protocols, and that stuff is I think good and fine, but I think within gaming you do need some kind of experience of what works and what doesn't work to know what you can and can't do in the future for these things.
And particularly, I think on the first time game builder side, I think one of the most frequent mistakes we've seen is inefficient use of capital, and more specifically a poor job of understanding how much capital you need to get from where you are to where you want to be, and so you've had a lot of situations where development is usually going to be delayed by something, and so where they plan to be for their next round, they're not quite there yet, which makes raising the next round even harder. And so you kind of get this downward death spiral for some of these guys. And so, the multi-time game founder, it's one, just building a game, but it's also managing a team, managing a budget, and managing a timeline, which is really hard and generally doesn't necessarily overlap with the original skill set that you're looking for in a game designer.
Yeah. Also, so switching gears a little bit, a lot of ton ecosystem activity. I don't know if you guys experienced the same thing. That was like one of the sectors that people were talking about the most. Um, I know I had one of our portfolio companies, shout out Fanton, take us through like the Telegram wallet experience, and it's actually pretty smooth at this point. They also have this deposit campaign where you can earn up to like 50% you can earn 50% APY on up to 10K if you just KYC with them. So I'm very curious who's paying for that, and also how many users they've gotten through that, because there's like a billion tether on Tron now, a little bit over that. And so I wonder how many like unique users actually signed up for this campaign, because that bodes well for distribution. And then there's like so many mini apps with tens of millions of monthly active users at this point. Like a lot of them are clickers, but there's like a dating site. I saw like a Tinder on Telegram. There's like all sorts of stuff on there. It does feel like an interesting like distribution method, but also a lot of these Telegram mini apps do literally nothing on Ton. In fact, one of them like upset everyone because they launched a token on Solana. They like had a Ton mini game and everyone thought it was going to be an airdrop on Ton, and then they just launched a token on Solana because literally none of this stuff runs on chain. So it's like bullish distribution and the UX, but yeah, I still don't see the full picture of how this will end up.
I don't have too much insight into Ton. I know Duncan looked into Ton quite a bit a couple months ago, and I know lots of things have probably changed since then. But it's a distribution thing for me. But I think it's kind of telling that the Ton project would launch their token on Solana, right? I think that kind of tells you a bit that like the users that you want, or maybe the users are just there and ready on Solana versus on Ton. It just something doesn't feel right there to me. Like it looks like it should just take off, but like nothing really is. So I'm kind of just like curious. I'm kind of sitting out on it mostly because I just don't understand enough of it and like where the value really is. And like there haven't been too many like compelling apps or projects that I would want to get involved in. I think a lot of them you can make good money on, like that Not coin and stuff back then and all that stuff. But like I'd rather take the time and spend it in Solana, to be honest.
Yeah, what do you think, Duncan? I'm curious.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't over-index for that one token.
Yeah, but maybe I think it's just like an early like flag post.
Yeah, I definitely think it's kind of interesting that like you could use Telegram's distribution and then just go and kind of do your own thing on a different chain. But yeah, it's probably like kind of a one-off because I'm sure it's a lot smoother having it on Ton. But definitely they have a ton of distribution. I still feel like they need to make the chain a little bit less clunky. And yeah, like I think it has definite potential. They just
what do you think
need to work on the chain. I feel like.
What do you think of the Katizens and Hamster Combat launch? How did it go versus what you expected? I was expecting bigger launches, honestly. I mean, Hamster Combat's traded like 500 million, like in the first few hours. But Katizens, I think, settled somewhere like 800 million fully diluted. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you definitely have a kind of like after Notcoin was like such a success on Binance, and these games, like relatively speaking, pretty low lift. Right, they're just clicker games, which are like incentivizing kind of like you to go and follow their social media and join their Telegram group and all that stuff. So they can get pretty insane distribution, and like they're kind of fun, but like it's kind of the thing with meme coins, right? It's like, once one meme coin goes to 4 billion, there's 10,000 launched a day, right? So, when Notcoin pumps to 1 billion and like there's a very low cost to create these things, then there's probably like, hundreds of clicker games a day being launched on Solana. And obviously, Hamster Combat and Cat Citizens are two of the bigger ones and got traction early. But there's just like, the effort it takes to make that game versus the potential payout, reaching like billions-dollar valuation.
Yeah, but there's like millions of them now. There's like hundreds of clicker games that haven't done what Hamster Combat or Catizen. I mean, Catizen's been building for like 2 years, and I think Hamster Combat was.
It's the same thing with
Yeah.
meme coins, though. It's just like the fact that they exist and there's such low lift games in terms of like Notcoin or Hamster Combat, like a massive incentive to just spam development of them.
Do you guys know what the last Hamster Combat round was? I actually don't. I think the Catizen's one was like 200 to 300 mil, so not a great launch. Probably up 2-3x on at this point. But Hamster Combat looks to be like almost 60% diluted. Like almost 60% of the float is out there.
Yeah, they
which is
airdropped
kind of
a lot.
bullish. It's like a $500 million market cap. And it traded its entire market cap in volume over the first 2 hours on Binance. It looks like, yeah, pretty wild. All right, we want to move to markets. It looks like we have reawoken, and specifically, I'm interested in getting you guys' take on, I mean, markets generally, and also like VC coins, that would have been very hated, including sometimes by us on this podcast, have seemed to have come alive and actually outperformed memes over the last 7 days. Curious, yeah, how's everyone feeling about the market? Is this real? Yeah, how you guys feeling?
I'm kind of worried a little bit going into the election. That's like my one thing that I'm a little bit worried about. I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty there. But like, yeah, I think things are looking pretty good. Like one thing that I like to look at for Bitcoin is like gold, and gold has been making like new all-time highs every day for the past like month. And I think that Bitcoin fundamentally is like pretty similar to gold. So on a fundamentals basis, I think it should kind of follow, but it does have a super high correlation with stocks and kind of more risk assets. So we still might be going through a bit of digestion, but I think like the big kind of question mark, and maybe I'm just overthinking it, or maybe the market is like kind of over indexing on it, but I just feel like the election is in the US like going to be really important for like what are the next regulatory steps, because if it's priced basically 50-50 right now, 50% of the market is thinking you could get a Trump win, essentially like a massive easing off of regulatory bodies, like he appoints a new SEC chair and head of the CFTC, and then it's just like a big safe period for crypto, and alt founders and other projects can take on a lot more risk, and there probably won't be too much action. But then, if you get a Kamala win and it kind of continues with these more unclear rules around crypto, maybe even like a further crackdown, because like we haven't really seen the SEC, I feel like, slow down much during this election cycle, and they keep on cracking down. So like if there's another win and it just goes further in that direction, I think that could be scary for alts longer term.
On the SEC point, I think that I forget the cutoff date. It's either end of September or end of October, where basically everything they prosecute after that won't count as a feather in Gensler's cap. So they try and rush everything, and then you can kind of that's why you're seeing a flurry, and then it'll kind of stop. Is kind of the understanding I've gotten from talking to other people. Yeah, markets wise, I think my base case is we don't break all-time highs until after the election. If you like zoom out, from the all-time high in March, we've kind of, or late February, we've kind of made lower highs consistently. 65 most recently has been a pretty big source of resistance. So I think, if we can break through that, we probably teleport to high 60s, and then I would be surprised if we broke out. I think there's like low chance we break out to new all-time highs before election, unless you're starting to see a lot more confidence in a Trump victory. So, but during that time, I do think you'll see some degree of alt season, which is kind of what we're seeing now with Bitcoin dominance being super high. You're starting to see kind of total 3 breakout, which is just like a look at crypto market cap outside of BTC and ETH. And so
you think it'll run from here? You're
I think we kind of chopped until election.
I mean, alts.
Alts, I think, alts, I think are pretty well set up. I think, decent amount. Dominance still pretty low. The total market cap of total 3 is getting up there, but I think part of that is also just a function of unlocks and new token launches, right? So it's not necessarily appreciation per se. It's just creation of new market cap just through new tokens. And so I do think alts can run decently well. You're not seeing an insane amount of new money come in the space though, so it'll probably be a select subset of alts and not a broad-based rally, kind of what we've seen, over the past year or so. It hasn't really been an everything up type of environment. And then because you also have a lot of macro tailwinds, right? China easing is pretty bullish, and like the measures they're going with are pretty hilarious. It's like a pretty blatant attempt at manipulating the stock market upwards in terms of what they're doing to the point it's not just kind of interest rate cuts, but incentives to buy homes and giving money basically like brokerage firms and insurance funds to help to basically deploy into the stock market. And so I think that'll increase liquidity and serve as a tailwind. And then U.S. markets are looking a lot better. The rally there is broadened out, right? So it's not just a Mag 7 story again. And at the same time, the China stimulus should be good for a lot of hard assets and commodities. So that'll broaden out the rally in stocks, which should help on the crypto side as well. And then, so I do think alts will do well. You're probably going to get some occasional flushes, but I think there's a chance we can break to all-time highs before the election, but ultimately I don't think it'll happen until afterwards.
I echo a lot of the same thoughts, like at a high level that Duncan and Jan just shared. I think you have at the high level, you have China issuing a ton of stimulus coming into the market through various sources and into various like places, right? Stock market, commodities, everything, houses, all that stuff. On top of that, you also have we started cutting interest rates. What was it? A couple of weeks ago, you had a 50 basis point rate cut, and the bond market is kind of pricing in maybe another 50 basis points before the end of 2024, and then another several cuts in 2025. All of these things are super, super bullish for risk assets, as everybody knows. And quick plug to our last year's year ahead markets report. Those were like the two things that we kind of pointed to as what would needed to happen in order for us to get a real bull market in crypto markets. Specifically China taking the liquidity baton, which they just kind of did, and then interest rate cuts, right? Interest rate cuts for me are really important because they kind of catalyze the two missing ingredients that we've been missing this bull market or this cycle relative to last cycle or previous cycles, right? All the other cycles occurred when interest rates were quite low, which is very, very good for things like stablecoin creation and credit expansion, which are super important for risk assets, right? Credit is very good for speculation, and you just need more stablecoins to have a bigger broad-based rally like we saw in prior cycles. Something that I always like mention on Twitter or in our chats is like stablecoins grew from 5 to 10 billion at the start of 2020 to 190 billion at the cycle peak. versus, bottoming out at around 130, 120 billion after FTX exploded. And now we're kind of back at that, like $190 billion market cap. So like you had a 40x increase in stablecoin market cap last cycle versus, like a 30% increase so far this cycle. And then obviously, credit is a huge thing. We don't have any real crypto credit from an institutional standpoint this cycle, right? Genesis's loan book was like $15 billion on its own. And then you had, several other institutional lenders that had several $billion loan books themselves. And most of that money was, pushed back into markets via speculative funds and things like that. So without these two things, like it's kind of like you can't really expect everything in crypto to go up like they did in prior cycles because there's just simply not enough money to push everything up. And then, Duncan always brings up the other side of the equation, which is the supply side. Supply only continues to grow in crypto. So if everything's to go up, you just need more money. I think this is the start of that, which is really, really exciting for me. In terms of the sectors, right? Yeah, to Jose's point, over the last, like 14 days or so, a lot of the best performers haven't actually been meme coins. They've been, kind of things like you mentioned, the quote unquote VC coins. I think there's, a question. I'm pretty sure Duncan would cast some doubt on this, right? You have a bunch of unlocks coming up. So you probably had a ton of people positioning. You're like, oh, I'm going to short this VC coin into this unlock. And then they just get absolutely blown out, right? You saw that with TIA, right? Having absurdly high negative funding.
Say as well.
Sometimes Sui, I believe as well, had that dynamic going on for quite some time. And
Athena, I think to some extent.
Athena, yeah.
Although, I don't know. Funding looked to have normalized on. I don't know. I find it hard to. It looked like it had normalized at the bottom actually for these coins. That's why I'm interested in, because people were bullish majors and like bearish a lot of these alts. And so what is it that changed that? Is it just the fact that basically rate cuts, China stimulus just means people go out on the risk curve, and that's enough to undo the effect of the unlocks and the supply coming onto the market
and positioning
starting out?
I think a lot of it was positioning.
People just
right?
got trade got too consensus basically.
Over the last 6 months, you could have like just shorted pretty much any of these coins at any point and got away with it, right? So it creates like a lot of really bad habits for people in the market. And if you've been around crypto for a while, it's like most people aren't actually that great at short-term positioning. It's more so, you're just in a market that's very, very forgiving most of the time. And then when that kind of sentiment shifts, like a lot of people continue trying to do the things that worked for the last couple of months. And I think like over the last couple of weeks, you've seen this big, like I felt this big like shift in price action and sentiment and things like that. So people that like maybe don't have as much experience or just like aren't in the, the weeds of these like shorter time frame types of moves as much, just kind of go back to the well that's been working. And unfortunately, like an example I like to use is like the TIA one that had extremely negative funding. And like, regardless of what you think about, like DA and, cost of this and all that and alternative DA, whatever, right? Like just looking at that chart, I was just like, I wouldn't short this. Like it's already down 80+%. And you just saw tons of people coming in to short this thing. And then you had a bunch of VCs go on Twitter to, like put up their threads about why Celestia is great, blah, 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 blah. And I just think you just get this like really, right. You just get this really weird positioning mismatch in the market. And in the short term, you just get a lot of blowouts to the upside. And I think you will get your answer, your actual answer as to like, are these coins now more in favor after this like next couple weeks or month or so of unlocks hits the market, right? Is there an actual organic bid to absorb these things or not? The jury is still out. I lean towards no, as Duncan is saying. But interestingly, something that I've noticed outside of those the VC cabal coins or whatever is if you look back to like the start of the year and the end of last year, AI coins were the first like sector to really start ripping, right? Because you had ChatGPT like really hit the market in, I think it was like October of 23, like people actually like starting to use this and see like all the cool stuff and applications that would be unlocked by this type of tech. And then you had Render, you had Tau, whatever all the other ones were, I forget, Fetch, right? All of these things rip and do like absolute insane moves to the top. And then after that, you saw memes follow, right? You saw like Whiff, you saw, I don't know, all the memes, right? And I'm seeing like the exact same thing happen right now in the markets, right? Like if you look at a sector breakdown over the last couple of weeks, like, yeah, the those coins that we just talked about are like the VC coins are doing quite well and have been doing better than memes a lot of the time at large. But some of the bigger moves have been in a lot of these AI names too. And then, in the trenches, which I know Setters hates that term, but like you're starting to see like memes again, just like these new memes that are launching have like sustained multiple week just straight run ups, right? And I think it's just like indicative of the shift in risk appetite and sentiment in markets. Like over the last 6 months, any meme that came was pretty much dead on arrival. It maybe pump for a couple days and then just fucking go to zero. Whereas like now you have a bunch of these things ripping to $100 million market caps and kind of holding for weeks on end. So I think it's like, I think the market is kind of telling you that, risk appetite is kind of back on the menu. And I think the only thing that really derails
memes are
these
back
markets,
on the menu.
No. Risk appetite is back on the menu. And I think to Duncan's point, what really potentially derails us is the election. That's like the only thing that I see that can stop this train.
Yeah, I feel like, and we're recording this just for some context. Like Bitcoin's in the middle of a massive green candle. So Bitcoin's 65,500. And I don't know, I kind of feel like you on the alts and some of like the longer tail stuff, like what we might see again, like I wouldn't at all be surprised to see like maybe Bitcoin like rally up to 70 or something and like hang in there or come back a bit. But then as soon as Bitcoin starts rolling even a bit, just like another full on all puke on all of as these unlocks hit and these coins come out.
Yeah, the unlocks have started though for a lot of these.
I know, but when the market's going up, everyone is 3-3ing. Everyone is holding. We're going to infinity. Bitcoin goes to 70K. No one sells a single coin. And then all of a sudden, Bitcoin goes from like 70K to like 67K, like that. And all these things get fucked. That's kind of what... Yeah, that's
unlock related though, because I think they're all going to. I agree, they'll all puke, right? It's not even going to be tokens with unlocks. I think.
Yeah, everything will puke because it's just marginal selling. And also the other thing with Total 3 that it's not really that great of an indicator because it only shows the top 125 coins. If you go to like CoinGecko and go to like the total market cap, it'll show you everything. And obviously there's a lot of like, I'm sure they filter out the ones that are clearly scams or like unverified, but like Total 3 is only the top 125 and we are launching so many more coins. So I'm just looking at, March 11th, which was like the peak of the market. The market cap peaked at 2.85 trillion and now we're at 2.4 trillion, so it's down like 5%. The total market cap.
2.4 trillion on CoinGecko.
Yeah, if you go to CoinGecko and then at the top you hit market track. So it's basically like the market cap is down 5%, but many alts and many coins are down fucking 70%. So this is this whole dilution thing that
the thing is though,
that's just a huge mismatch. Like if you look at this, the market cap's down 5%, but a lot of these prices are down 50% plus. So that's the only thing that I would be careful about.
Yeah, the stuff down there is going to be heavy, low float, high FTV because CoinGecko tracks by market cap, not FTV. So like it doesn't really come into play as much. And I agree. I don't think it's a great signal. It's more just, are we breaking out? Are we breaking down? Like another view on it. I do think though that we've churned through a lot of BTC supply. So, over the summer through all the selling from governments and all the seized Bitcoin, everything else in between. So, having that out of the way in a friendly environment is going to be very constructive for price. So, like even pullbacks that we've seen, like I thought the chop would be worse on the way down, right? Because over the summer, if you plot kind of BTC against equities, that we were underperforming, right? Downside similar, if not worse, upside less. And then right now it's, at least today, but today means nothing. It's reversing a bit. So I do think there's a slightly more constructive environment for BTC. And ultimately, I think, BTC is going to be fine either way with either person in office. But I do still think you get a broader puke with Kamala, including on BTC, not from the regulatory side, but from just the increase in taxes, right? And how that plays out. I don't think I'm pricing in a very, very, very low chance of the unrealized gain tax, but just increasing individual taxes, both cap gains and income, and then corporate taxes. This is going to be a big drag and create a lot of panic, I think.
Yeah, I think that, we're just going to continue to see, positioning on alts got really terrible, and sentiment got really low and people got really short. And now we've had a solid BTC run, and alts are now moving. But I think you're going to see on a macro picture this dynamic of BTC hanging in, going down a bit, and just maybe some alts are outperforming on the upside. But I think basically all alts are going to just really on the downside kind of get crushed, or when BTC is chopping, just they have such weight to them. And I think as the market matures, it's if you have just because Bitcoin, the outlook for Bitcoin does well, yes, there's going to be certain outperformers, obviously, and you'll probably do really well if you can find them, but it can't carry all this other shit up, especially without the environment that Jason was talking about, which is retail environment, more credit in crypto. If you want everything to really, for a sustained rally, go up, you need retail and credit back, and I don't think that happens until Bitcoin's probably 80 to 100K, and then maybe you could get something that's really crazy for a sustained amount of time. But until then, I think every big BTC sell off, you're going to see a lot of these alts get puked pretty hard.
I think you're right. Just one thing that's so if I think back to, and I look back at how things I've owned have acted and performed, from, I would say, don't laugh.
Okay, Jason's gonna be telling us about the meme sector.
From everything from June to beginning of September, maybe, or August, right? Everything, even when because Bitcoin is done decently well. You had a pretty big sell off. At when was that? At the start of August, right? When you had that Japanese macro blow up, right? But that isn't really indicative of crypto. That was everything. So I kind of just take that really big puke and drawdown, and I just remove it, or I try to just pretend it didn't exist, as I don't think that's indicative of crypto weakness or anything like that. And the way just the way that markets have, or crypto markets and altcoins, not just memes, but it's I think it's a very good barometer for just pure risk appetite and speculative frenzy, which is why I go back to it. The way that the market has traded since the beginning of September to now is very, 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 very different than the way the market traded from May to the beginning of September. Very, very different. I'm looking at my, my watch list. Literally everything is green. Every single thing is green except ETH BTC, which is
Jason. This is what I think. Yeah,
right. But
Larry's not done accumulating Bitcoin, and the cabal is pumping these VC coins into unlock.
I don't have many of these VC coins on my watch list.
That's my current positioning right now.
So the way I look at it is the market is trading and acting differently than it has over the last several months. So I think that should be a sign to people that hey, maybe things are starting to resemble more of what we saw from October 23 to March of 24 versus what we saw from April to September.
I think this is more of a mean reversion than a market structure shift. We're not done working through that. Okay, we can make.
We'll see. I mean, we come back in a couple months.
So, I don't think this is a market structure shift into alt season. I think this is just positioning.
I agree with that.
Too bearish.
But I don't think it's alt. I agree with that. I think it's a start.
Interesting. You think it's a start? You think it's the start of alt season?
I think so.
But you mentioned you've obviously been playing the beta through mainly memes, and and you're and doing very well through it. And your argument was sort of they're the fastest horse. As long as they're the fastest horse, I'll keep betting on them. And it's like, I guess, how much VC coin outperformance
Do I need to see
do you need to see before you rotate?
Exactly.
To that?
I want to see what happens after.
That's like,
after
let's
those
catch
unlocks.
the fucking hot potato. It's like, let's play hot potato with the piece of dynamite.
I think it's just positioning.
No,
it was like the outperformance is positioning based.
What Jan just said is like my theory for why a lot of these hated VC coins have done really well over the last month or two. And to your question, like, what would I need to see? I want to see what happens to them after the unlocks. I have no problem being late to things, right? Like, I don't need to buy the bottom of stuff. Like, I think that's more of like an exercise in ego than it is anything else. So like, after all of these things hit the market, after these unlocks hit the market, I will kind of see how price trades. Do we still see all of this, like bull posting from people on Twitter or not? Like, I'm kind of curious for that. Like, I'm not sold on it. It was a lot easier for me to get into, like, identify Sol as like the main ecosystem I wanted to be invested in, last year after we had a couple of those early reports that, Ceteris wrote, Solana, the monolith, blah, blah, blah. You started to see a lot of stuff happening on Solana with, like Jito, Jupiter, very reminiscent of, like ETH DeFi summer in 2020, like you're actually starting to be able to do stuff as opposed to just speculate on the native token or, just random stuff. And it was just like, to me, it just seemed like very clear that like, okay, like if Solana's where I want to be, right, and Solana goes up to $200 or $500 or whatever it is, obviously that money's going to flow through into the ecosystem. And looking back at what happened with ETH, like the best performers last cycle were memes. So it's just like, okay, like I'm just going to run that back and kind of hope that plays out. And you kind of got confirmation of that playbook with Bonk after Breakpoint in October 23. So it's like, it was quite easy for me to then kind of go into the memes that were trading absurdly high volumes, very, very liquid, very early on, like, right, like WIF was, even before it did, it's like 10x to the $1 billion market caps, right? It was trading in like the 100 million, 200 million, and it was trading the amount of volume per day. No. I'm trying to explain what you need to look for healthy trades.
Let's make a bet.
That trade more in volume than they do in market cap per day, like, for example, WIF was trading more daily volume, more 24-hour volume than Solana and ETH at times.
When?
So do you see a setup? So are you positioned like that on memes now? So when you say alt season is starting, you mean like you're playing that through memes, right?
I haven't bought any more memes. Any more memes. I hold the memes I owned, right? Because my thesis was I'm going to hold these memes until I think the cycle's done. And at no point over the last 6 months, even though we've gotten annihilated, have I thought the cycle was done. And I still think Solana goes up to make probably new price all-time highs. I know market cap all-time highs, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like, I think it goes up and makes new price all-time highs. And in that world, I still see these things moving up, multiples from here. That said, I am looking for other things, right? Like, and maybe some of these other, VC coins, if they do prove strength after unlocks, I have no problem buying them. I just won't be super early. But like, I think it's more about expectation than anything. Like, I'm not expecting meme-like returns out of those coins. I'm expecting to be able to go into those with, more size and, more liquidity available. So it's just like, kind of like, what game do you want to play?
What about you, Jan?
I think on the VC side. Yeah. So if you think like why they've outperformed recently, in a complacent market or a market that's like kind of gradually trending lower and you're trying to make some money, you start shorting. What's easier to short? A meme coin that a VC coin that will have some degree of guaranteed sell pressure, or a meme that can kind of rip in your face a bit more. So I think it was a lot easier and a lot easier to rationalize shorts in the VC coins. And so, they've underperformed quite a bit worse. So they're going to bounce a bit harder, especially with that short fuel. You also have some VCs that themselves are shorting them, right, to lock in gains. And and then you've had scenarios where they've gotten blown out. Yeah.
Give
and
the
like,
alpha. I haven't heard of this. Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but and so you like that contributes to it, right? And so like, especially with how consensus it becomes, right? Everyone's talked about these unlocks since they've been known, which is a year ago, and so I think that explains some of the short-term moves. But yeah, outside of that, it's just easier to paint a ridiculous valuation on something that has no fundamental value, and that kind of just goes back to the reason, you know, memes end up pumping is it's so reflexive, and there's such a kind of winner take most market. It's pretty barbelled, right, where you have the best do well, but once they get too rich, there's not as much upside there, and so anyone who's a smaller player then tries to play in the pump.fun, and that was what led to that whole kind of element. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's still a really hard market to outperform Bitcoin in, right? And I think one kind of way to gauge that is if you look at BTC Dom this cycle. You know, you've had pullbacks, and in those pullbacks, alts went nuts, and everyone thought they're making a bunch of money, but BTC Dom has just been kind of up and to the right. If you look at from let's say like start of last summer, right, when we kind of floored, we're at 50%. Even starting at June, we're at 47.5. Now we're at 57.5. 10 percentage points, or like a 25% increase in Dom. And so that's with the launch of all these new tokens that are keeping that naturally dragging that level lower. And so
Are you sure? Because I think Bitcoin dominance takes doesn't it take the total market cap, which just includes the top 125? Are you sure it includes all the new launches and how it calculates the?
You can check it on CoinGecko as well. That does.
And real quick, oh yeah, you go, Zay.
Sure. No, that's I really enjoying the discussion. And what would it take to like invalidate that? I guess for both of you, like. Would it take?
I'm even kind of confused on people. Why don't we do everyone go around, all four of us, and say what we're thinking happens to the end of the year, like 3 sentences, clear, concise.
Are we going to assume that like Trump wins because like obviously that's a huge...
you can give caveat, just like clear, like Trump wins this, Kamala wins that, just like so we all understand.
Okay, so I'll start, I guess. So really quick before I get into that, just to kind of put numbers to that volume number that I was spouting before. If you go look on Binance right now, the most liquid exchange, Bitcoin's 24-hour volume, 40 billion, ETH, 16 billion, Sol, 7 billion. Pepe is the next highest at 3 billion. WorldCoin, 2.5. Sui, 1.93 billion. And then WIF at 1.8. Nobody's trading WIF, and it's still a top 5 coin or top 6 coin traded on Binance in volume. So when the market heats up, yeah, obviously it's going to trade absurdly high volumes. That's kind of what I mean about things. And then going to your question about now until the end of the year, if Trump wins, I think Bitcoin hits all-time highs this year, or moves to new all-time highs. Does it go to 80K, 100K? I don't know. I think your point, Duncan, about 100K is where like retail starts paying attention to crypto again. Makes a lot of sense. I know Ceteris has said a lot about that. I've posted, like, it's just a big psychological level. Like seeing Bitcoin $100,000 is going to cause a ton of FOMO. I think over the next, couple months, we're going to get additional liquidity injections from China. You'll probably see another 25 to 50 basis point cut, which should start catalyzing those two things that I mentioned in terms of stablecoin growth and credit creation. And I think, things like Solana, ETH even will do like higher. Again, I'm still kind of like bearish ETH relative to Sol and Bitcoin. Like, in order for me to buy ETH, I would have to sell out of my Bitcoin stack or my Solana stack. And I don't see the risk reward there for me. Like, I just don't see it at this point in time, especially coming out of like Breakpoint. I'm more bulled up on Solana, which is probably where I would have sold out anyway, or sold from to go to ETH.
So you're bullish majors and
bullish majors, and I will. so memes that like, not all memes, like only memes that like benefit directly from like a native token. So like I wouldn't buy like many ETH memes. Like honestly, like I own Pepe as my ETH exposure because I think if ETH ecosystem rips, that's going to be an obvious. Not, I mean, it might not be, right. It could just not outperform, but I think it will. Like history has shown that it generally does. So like that's my like ETH beta play. And in terms of Soul, like there are a couple things that like I'm kind of maybe looking to buy, but like in terms of what I currently own now, yeah, it's like Whiff, it's Bonk, and I think that if Solana does go up and goes past 200 again, maybe 250, 300 into the end of the year, depending on if Trump wins or not, I think both those memes will go on to perform quite well. And I'm kind of sticking to that thesis.
What about you, Jan? Where are you?
Those are
where
good
you at?
3 sentences.
Good 3
Sorry,
sentences.
that was like a mini paragraph.
So pre-election, low probability of all-time high probability of chop. I think as long as we don't really get any kind of scary macro numbers, or serious escalation in geopolitics, there shouldn't really be too big of a reason for us to nuke. I imagine we'll chop between like 60 and 70, but and in that time, alt will do worse than the drawdowns, and they'll just basically be higher beta BTC. Post election, I think, and even on that front, right? You have like Dom might come back down a little bit, but basically, as long as it pulls back a tiny bit, you that kind of is commensurate with pretty big alt moves. So I think you'll start to see alts do well. In terms of which specifically on the majors, yeah, I've kind of moved out of most of my ETH stack on this recent ETH BTC move higher, and kind of shifted to BTC and Sol. I mean, I was already not very heavily into ETH, but I kind of just it's been too painful to endure.
Trader.
And then I have I have a decent, like I basically also shifted some of that ETH exposure into Pepe. Is kind of I think it'll outperform ETH, so I'm like getting that same.
Such
exposure.
a ridiculous market. Like,
Yeah, unfortunately, it's what
Pepe is the.
And I gotta. So I have some other memes wise. I have I have decent bag of Whiff and Popcat. I think those are going to continue kind of doing well. And then I bought a bunch of Floki for CZ stuff that I've been sitting on for a little while. Yeah, that's done well. Although they're trying to do some real world stuff, which is kind of bearish utility on the memes.
What does the gem hunter think? The fundamental investor.
I'm thinking we rally into the election across the board. Although alts, BTC sells off, alt will sell off more. And then I think the elections, like I don't know, I'm putting a lot of weight on the election. I think if we get Trump in, yeah, probably BTC to new highs and pretty, good environment for alts. And there could be just some like craziness because people are so excited. I think if Kamala gets in, then yeah, BTC could still get to new highs maybe by the end of the year. I'm not quite as excited. I feel like Larry still needs to accumulate more. So like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like more range bound action. And then I think like alts would really get kind of crushed in that environment as just like the realities of the supply come online. Like I just think that the excitement around Trump could offset that. I still think those things exist. I just think that there could be an excitement that could maybe push BTC to new highs and then get retail in. I really think that you have to be bearish alts like on a 6 to 12 month view until BTC breaks new highs and gets retail. And that's kind of my like broad alts broad.
That's regardless of who wins.
No, well, like I said, like if Trump wins, I think it's a higher probability that BTC goes all time highs, and then you could offset that. But I still think the supply picture for alts is pretty tough.
How would you position? Like, are you positioned? Are you cash? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking like you probably
Gold miners.
Yeah, I have a lot of gold miners, but I think you probably want to kind of take some risk off into the election. Is my thinking, and reassess
Yeah.
afterwards.
Depending on where we are, right? If we're in the high 60s, then and then obviously weight that against how I think the outcome will be, which we'll have more information on going into it. But it seems like over time her chances should trend lower as she's forced to do public engagements and
I don't know.
mutter the same useless stuff. But I think it gets really dire if she wins.
That's
so
what I mean. So I just think
everything.
you just have to kind of
Yeah.
like I've been taking risk off like slowly, like throughout this move up, not in like massive ways, but it's like, okay, like this thing's doing really well, like let's just sell a little bit of it, and I probably will continue that mindset into the election.
That's my view. I mean, I think I agree with most of what you said. I'm bullish majors. I do think alts as a general category will struggle given unlocks, but I do think select alts will do really well, including ones that don't have unlocks coming, which there are a lot of them.
Jose, have you heard of a banana gun before?
I have heard of banana guns, surprisingly. And I have some banana gun. It's been disappointing me, actually.
What? It's up 4x this year. We're crushing ETH.
And yeah, I do think some alts will do well through unlocks. Like I think, yeah, unlocks can be over indexed on, and yeah, I think venture will do very well generally, honestly. And then memes, I don't have much of a view, to be honest. I have a few select memes, but it's not a big percentage wise of my portfolio. Yeah.
Yeah, venture's definitely gotten harder.
I only own one, I guess, pseudo meme.
Yeah, venture's gotten harder for sure.
I think that's more a function of where it started than anything else.
Yeah, no one. Yeah, exactly. There's just a lot of it now. Yeah, I think some of the like older vintages are going to really struggle to return. Like if they can return just people's money back, they're going to be very happy. I think some of
older or newer.
Sorry, yeah, some of the newer vintages, some of the
like 21s,
yeah.
No, I'd say yeah. I mean, 21 is definitely going to be tough.
Isn't that kind of just like it's similar to like the IPO market? Like it's mostly a function of like what market you deploy into.
Well, I mean, venture returns are the biggest explanatory factor for venture returns is vintage.
Okay, yeah, that's
what but there is some like we know
traditional
some
vintage as well.
Yeah, I think in crypto there's a lot of dispersion.
Do you guys think? I mean, this may be like a. Do you think we'll see more liquid funds start to pop up and deploy into markets? Like I feel like crypto markets are like literally a paradise for people who are good at liquid markets. But like I feel like we just don't see many funds do that.
I've just never seen more. And I've just it's rare that you see one do well over a long period of time, right? Like it's a paradise, but it's also like hell, right? There's like it's so PvP and like so hard. You can get nailed so bad. There are a few that I know that do really well, but I've not seen like someone be long term really successful with that, especially people who are like short to medium term trading. I think the hedge funds that did the best that I know of are the ones that just played it like liquid venture and just like took positions and stuff and held it for the long term. And I do think that will always do well. In general, I think just being long in crypto is the easiest way to play this. And I still think venture is going to do pretty well as long as you don't have a massive fund and you have a decent brand and you're in the right name, you're in the right projects.
On that liquid venture side, though, I think the reason we haven't seen too many, and particularly too many, do well is if you think of the setup that's required, right? So new guys coming into the space, I think, will struggle to do well in liquid venture because you kind of need to have seen enough cycles, need to have seen enough stuff play out to know where to avoid the pitfalls, and those will often end up, undoing a lot of strong performance, right? It's just like mistakes that would have probably been avoidable had you been around previously. But and then at the same time, those that have been around long enough typically have done well enough that they don't, the rationale for going liquid venture it's the carrot's not there, because if you're gonna make the fund 20% your capital, 80% outside, you're probably going to see a massive drag on performance, a massive amount of headache. All of this stuff just doesn't rationalize you upsizing your liquid bag large enough to be able to do that. And so you kind of have like an adverse selection issue where the best guys really won't do it, and then the new guys are going to kind of struggle because you need to have
I agree with that.
enough to do well.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right, I think we've gone on like nearly an hour and a half. Maybe we can call it here. Anyone have any last things to say about markets that you haven't said yet, or alts that you want to show? Looking at you, Gem Hunter.
No, I would just say, like, if things get crazy for a little bit here, like, just, everyone remember things can turn really fast. And I just think, like, the structural outlook for alts is just really tough. But, there's still opportunities.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, and I've been victim of this myself, not victim, but I've made this mistake, is you'll kind of go into a bullish setup with a plan, and then things start to rip and you're like, fuck it. And you just start pulling all your cells. And so I think that can often come back to bite you and cause you to round trip a lot more than you realistically wanted to or planned to, based on how you initially set out, how you wanted to exit.
Agreed. All right, guys, it's been another episode of the Hivemind. Thanks, Jason, for stepping in.
Appreciate you guys inviting me back.
And we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thanks, guys.